Card Wednesday on Lockdown Lift Up. And I'm making it a wild card Wednesday because normally we do that on Friday, but it makes more sense to do it on Wednesdays, don't you think? I think so. And with that, the way it works is I need a book. Let me find a book. One of my books. Hold on. As you can tell, I'm still packing, and I'm so grateful to come on and talk with you for the Lockdown Lift Up as I go about the packing, and it makes me, comb my hair and put on makeup and making care. Okay, so wild card Wednesday is taking one of my books, and we'll just grab the one How to Be Resilient When Life Sucks, which I wrote several years ago now. Because, by the way, Take Back Your Weekends is done. It is ready to go. So keep an eye out for when that officially will launch. It's coming up, but I don't have a hard copy to do this with. So let's figure out what the topics are. Okay, we're ready? Go. 1, 2, 3. Stop. Let's see. Oh, we already did that one. We can't do. Okay, so I'm going to have to mark the ones that were already done. It was expect miracles, strategize solutions. Okay. Yes, no matter what, Winston always goes to the spot, even though the chair is moving and everything around him is in his mind disappearing. And Tibor, awesome to have you here. The day has been great. I've been packing and looking forward to doing this. So let's try a new topic. All right, so I don't want to look. What about right there? Oh, we've also done that one. Gosh, we've done well. In fairness, we have had, so there's Owning Your No, From Funk to Fantastic, which you sort of talked a little bit last night. You know what? I'm just going to go to one. I saw one earlier that I really wanted to do. I was like, oh, I hope it comes to that one. Huh. It is about the spin doctor. We're going to go to chapter number 30, Spin Doctor. Here's what this is all about. It took a long time to get to. Amanda, I'm really excited for you to be here as well. Thank you for being here. The spin doctor is the concept. I guess I first learned about this. Well, maybe I first learned about it in TV shows, right? But I first really understood it when I ran for political office. Now, that was years ago, and I was in the back room for a lot of years before I actually went into politics myself as a candidate. By the way, did not win, just for the record. Obviously, thank goodness, because I do what I do now. And if I wouldn't have, then things wouldn't have been working out the way they should. But the idea about the spin doctor is that the public face that people present is often, not always, often very different than their reality. And so one of the reasons I am I have such a strong belief in authenticity, in sharing my mistakes, sharing the times I went wrong or didn't understand something, is because I was so acutely aware after a certain amount of time that I was comparing my internal self to my other people's external presence. And part of my work and my priority for people that I hope that I can inspire is for those to come together more, so that who you are, wherever you are, is the exact same person. And that freedom, when you're just like okay with yourself and all your mistakes and all the things that like really aren't the things maybe, that you're completely proud of in your life, it's really interesting because you don't have to try to put on airs. You don't have to be something for somebody else. You can just be you. And the concept of the spin doctor is that people are constantly putting spin. Some, not all. And I think actually something I'm really excited about is I think this is changing. I think with back in the day, probably even when I had to learn this lesson. Actually, you know what? Is it changing? It's just different. Okay, so now let me explore this in real time as I think and riff on a topic. Back when I started my career, it was very much still, you had to wear the navy suit, possibly pinstriped, the nylons and the pumps and no personality for it, because in many ways we were trying as young females, we were trying to fit into the old boys network and be invited to their table, as opposed to what I think is happening now. We're just going to the table. Whoever's at it, maybe we're even creating our own. And that's no longer an issue. We can have a lot of color in our life. We can show up however we want. But when I was starting my career, those people, those leaders, those politicians, those executives at companies who I used to interview when I was a columnist, they were, in my mind, held to such a high esteem. They were put up on a pedestal and often felt untouchable. And the truth is, they were just people who have all the same challenges that every one of us has, or they have gone through and overcome. And, you know, that's totally fine. But the perception of them was you couldn't get too close. Everybody had to like mind their P's and Q's around these really cool people. And to me, that's really spin. That is my personal brand, is I'm untouchable. I'm really awesome at everything I touch, and I'm not going to let down my guard ever. And I think that creates a real gap in our happiness. Because if we're one way and we think other people think of us, actually, you know, it's funny, when I used to write the column, and it was very popular. For those of you who remember it, it was called The People You Know. And it's so fascinating because as I'm packing up my house and going through everything, I really saw like all these hundreds of columns are all in like this great big box. And one day I'm going to go through them and just read them. And I'm sure my organizer friend, Betsy, who her team is helping me do the packing, if you hear tape in the background on boxes, would love for me to do. But anyway, not doing it yet. But people looked at me like, because I was this columnist, I would end up meeting somebody and they'd be like, and it was like such a small scale, like, please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But like people were like, oh my gosh, you know, you're Allison Graham. Like now that nobody knows what that means, but back then that was cool. And they were really like sometimes it would happen. They'd be really intimidated and like so excited because they'd seen me in the paper and on stage and all this stuff. And I'm like, and then they meet me and I might have been a bit of a letdown because I'm like, oh no. But it was like I had this persona of the proper person out in society. And then I'd get home and I felt so much shame because I was like, well, I'm not really actually kind of clumsy and, you know, at the time really insecure and all of these things. And so then so I was like, I was on the other side of the spin. And you want to talk about spin. When I was still working in the media and running for politics, that was after the surgery. You know, people will say, why did you run for politics? I'll be like, because I was angry with the government and high on Percocets. I shouldn't make a joke about that, but honestly, that is just so not aligned with who I am in terms of like wanting to do and like be in the negative energy. And like I have such a huge respect for politicians, and oh my gosh, right now in the world, I just couldn't even imagine being at any level of government and having to navigate what's going on. It's just my skill set is elsewhere. But I was really frustrated with the government and I was involved in politics. I always thought I was going to run. But here's the spin doctor at work, which is the chapter we're talking about. People didn't know. People didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. I kept on the airs like you wouldn't believe. Like I remember I had a party downstairs in my condo building, and I think there were like 75 people there. It was awesome. And about 3/4 of the way through, a friend of mine who knows me really well and knew everything that was happening behind the scenes with my pain and everything that I was struggling with. Yeah, I feel bad I made that medication joke, but like you know, right out of surgery, it was pretty tough. I was so grateful. I never got addicted to medication and never. So anyway, just sidebar on that. But she looked at my eyes. She said, Allison, you're in so much pain. I'm like, no, I'm fine. And she's like, well, Allison, I can see it in your eyes. And I'm like, yeah, this is tough. So she started saying, oh, you know what? I think maybe it's time to wrap up. And like, you know, started sort of getting that feel of how do we get people out of here gracefully without saying, Allison, is in too much pain to have any of you here. And as the last guest walked out of the party, I collapsed. Like collapsed on the floor, laid under the pool table, was like, I can't move. So here's the spin doctor at work. The party, the people who saw that I was co-hosting this incredible networking event, which was just like all these incredible human beings in the room, would have thought, oh, there's Allison, the hostess with the mostest, great networker. I mean, at the time I taught networking, and all of these pieces of the puzzle, right? The reality, the spin, that was spin. That was me pretending everything was okay and pushing through and, keep going. When in actual fact, what was happening behind the scenes is I was in so much pain, I needed to collapse on the floor and I couldn't get up. And we just sat there and had a glass of wine for like an hour or a couple hours or however long it was until they could actually get me physically off the ground and upstairs, up the elevator into my home. And so this idea around a spin doctor is just be aware of it. Like what people say is not necessarily what they intend, or, actually sometimes it's what true spin, it's totally what they intend. It's what they intend your opinion of them to be. And so awesome to know that that's not always the case. Now, let me just go over here to the chat box for a second. Michael, I am great. Thank you for asking. And AJ, hello. Awesome to have you here. And James, all right. Oh, thanks for asking about my mom. You know what? They canceled her surgery again yesterday. So she's just hanging out in that hospital, a strong woman. Just wait until it happens. So thank you for the kind words and thoughts. All right, Greg, most of our favorite people have their spin in check. Yes, that's exactly right. Because the ones who we connect with them authentically are the ones who don't have this disconnect between their public and their private image, right? Okay, let me read what else you said. I've always admired someone that is the exact same, regardless of whom they are speaking with, from family to colleagues to celebrities, pure, authentic, awesome. And you know what? So here, remember earlier I was saying that we, like back in the day, people were untouchable. I actually think now what's happening is there's more spin or the same amount of spin, but nobody feels untouchable, right? Like there aren't really those, or maybe that's just where I am in my life. I don't do the pedestal thing anymore. So that could be part of it. But I think it's also that the spin is rampant, because if you look at somebody through a filter, if you look at them through their snapshot, I remember a friend of mine went on this incredible vacation, and I texted her when she got back and I said, oh my God, you are incredible. Like, look at this family vacation you had. And she starts laughing. She called me, she's laughing, and she said, yeah, it was awful. I'm like, what? She's like, we fought the whole time. We're so concerned about money. And I'm like, well, you'd never tell it from your pictures. She's like, yeah, I did a good job, didn't I? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, anyway, they separated 2 months later. So there you go. Talk about a spin doctor. Okay, let's go over here and see what else is in the book. Page 143. Oh, thanks, James. James said I would 100,000% vote for me. Well, thank you. But then I wouldn't be here. You never would have met me because I would have been in office. Authenticity seems to be a big deal right now. I've never heard it mentioned as much as I have in the last couple of years, and I'm glad. Me too, Suzanne. And you know what's, I think because people are so tapped, they're stressed, they're frustrated with whatever circumstances are going on in their lives. And we're too busy. And so our bullshit meter is like just on high alert, right? Bullshit. I call bullshit. And so like for me, it's great because I'm a little bit more accepted now than I think I was years ago when I started to do this. I just be me and not have to like Like if you look back to some of my early videos, I was like trying so hard to be somebody that I thought people would like, or that the way they expected me to be, right? All dressed up and yeah, I don't know, just maybe not as at ease. And now I'm like, you know what? I think if we can all be like, if I show up 100%, I'm going to use James 1,000% as ourselves, you know, without being inappropriate, by the way. Like there is TMI at some point publicly, but I think how much better would our world be? We'd be connecting with people on the level of who they actually are. And this is the whole problem with the spin doctor, is because it's, you know, interesting. Oh, so I gave examples in the book. And because the next chapter is the not so jolly green giant, which is all about jealousy. So this was building up to that comment. But here's a sample. Every event we've ever hosted is sold out. So somebody says that and you're running events and you're like, oh my gosh, nobody's coming to my events, right? Like I'm having trouble. I'm working so hard, but somebody's up there. Oh, every event I've had is sold out. So get this. This actually happened. Really, wow. I scrambled to get half of my desired attendees to come out to my event. I'm obviously horrible at running events. Okay. So that was the thinking. Reality. The organizer, you ready for this? Changed the number of tickets they wanted to sell to represent the number of tickets they actually sold. And voila, the event is a sellout. No, like, but look at how people do this. And this spinning of the facts so that you think more of somebody is so inauthentic. But like, you don't say, oh, you know what, we did that. You just don't tell everybody you sold out your event. You just say, we had an event with some incredible humans coming. Like, you know, stop trying to make it sound good. So an example too, and of course my industry is a speaker. I'm an international speaker, sought after around the globe. So as somebody back in the day when I like desperately wanted to be on more stages and, you know, expand my horizons into the US and UK and all of this, I was like, oh, really? Wow. I only get speaking gigs within a 3-hour radius, right? Obviously, I'm not very popular. So that was the thinking. The reality, the speaker once did a speech for a small honorarium in another country to get a tax write-off for a vacation for their family. Right? So that's the spin doctor. And we have to be discerning. By the way, people can spin all they want. The thing is, we have to be discerning about what facts we say are legitimate and what stories we build around these things. This is so fun. I got to read this book again, but it's too fun reading it just with you. Okay, spin example number 3. My book became a bestseller on the first day. Really? Wow. I've barely sold 30 copies in the last 4 months, right? So this is out of the book. Let's hope my new book's going to rock it. I have expanded it. Oh my gosh, so much. Because I was first just going to do it as a downloadable book. And I just, yeah, it's going to be so awesome when it comes out. Okay, so here's the reality. The author organized an Amazon buy blitz for an hour by having his family and friends buy his book all at the same time to push the number to a number 1 seller in a small category for 1 hour. Once it's hit the top, even for a minute, you can call it a bestseller. It doesn't need to stay at the top. So, you know, when you unpack these situations and how people are showing up or what they're saying, and then you get like react to it or maybe feel jealous or think you're less than, just be considerate of how you do. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. Yeah, I promise I will not change. I am me showing up. Anyway, I think that is probably enough. There are more examples in here, but I'm going to read the last one. Let me do this. My kid is a superstar of his class, his clubs, his sports teams, and everything else he attempts. And the reality is the kid is miserable because he's constantly being held to an impossible standard that he can't maintain and will peak in high school. Interesting. So That's the spin doctor. Spin doctor at work. People are spinning tails. And it's up to us to interpret that information and decide, do I believe that's true? And how am I going to let that affect me? So this has been the lockdown lift up. I want to give you a heads up. Tomorrow is our official last lockdown lift up because the lockdown was supposed to end tomorrow. And that's fine. We're going to do the lift up. And then the lockdown continued. But I'm moving. It's a long weekend. And so I am going to come back to the lift up once I am settled in at the lake and I have everything all set up. So look for it, and I'm going to keep it going. We're going to need a new name. So, because once the lockdown's done, we can't call it the lockdown lift up anymore. We'll need something new. So whoever is really, creative and you have some ideas for the lift up, what kind of a lift up can we do to call it moving forward? And I think I'll do it Monday through Thursday is my thinking. I'm open to your ideas. Tammy, awesome to see you and have you here. Thank you. And thank you, James, for your kind words. So on that note, I hope you have the absolute best rest of the day. I am going to go and finish packing and get ready. I will see you tomorrow at 3:15 p.m. Eastern. Bye for now.